So on behalf of St. Anthony's and Our Lady of Victory and Christ the King, I welcome you to the second of our three-part speaker series this summer. And tonight we're blessed to have Father Timothy Radcliffe, who is a member of the Order of Preachers. That's why he has OP after his name. But we commonly call them Dominicans. We're lucky in this area to have Providence College, which is run by the Dominicans, and Christ the King has two Dominican sisters here on staff. He served as the master of the Order of Preachers. That's a big word for being the big boss. He did that from 92 to 2001. He's a member of the Dominican Priory at Blackfriars. And tonight he comes to us by way of Australia, a couple of days in California, visiting a prison yesterday in Connecticut, and tomorrow he's at Boston College, and then returns home. He's been away for
2.5 weeks.
2.5 weeks? That's all? All that? Ooh. The title of his presentation tonight is The Church in the 21st Century, Beyond the Ghetto and Assimilation. Welcome to the Cape.
Is that any better? Right. If I start to fade away, let me know. Actually, I'm probably going to fade away because, as Monsignor Dan said, 4 days ago I was in Sydney, Australia, which was 9 hours in front of British time. 2 days ago I was in Los Angeles, which is 9 hours behind British time. Now I'm here and I've no idea what time it is. So if I curl up in a little ball, then you've got to decide whether you'll wake me or whether you'll creep out quietly. I'm reminded of the British cabinet minister at the beginning of the last century, who said that he dreamt that he was addressing the House of Lords and then woke up to find that he was doing so. You got it. I have the impression that Mashpee's a fascinating place because it's here that you get a lot of the first trials in the encounter of indigenous culture with your European ancestors. This is one of the first places, I think, where the Native Americans met British settlers. It was here that Richard, he rushes over to his notes, Richard Bourne from Sandwich tried to put aside some land so as to let the Wampanoag people keep alive their culture. But it wasn't altogether successful because then you get the famous Mashpee revolt of 1833. I hope you're impressed by how much I know about you. So what you see is some of the complexities of that indigenous culture surviving in a very hostile environment. Now, what I would like to suggest to you is that that's not altogether irrelevant to what I want to think about this evening, which is how Christianity can thrive in the 21st century. I'm going to speak out of my experience of England. Now, that's a much more secular culture than the United States. So some of what I'm going to say will probably not be entirely relevant, okay? So forgive what doesn't work. But I console myself, as I do often when I lecture, by thinking of one of my brethren who gave a lecture in Chicago, and he sat down at the end, and the applause was a bit tepid. So he turned to the man beside him and he said, "I hope it wasn't that bad, was it?" And the man said, "Oh, I don't blame you. I don't blame you at all. I just blame the person who asked you to come and speak in the first place." So blame Monsignor Dan. I grew up in a Catholic subculture that was simultaneously confident and open. You could tell the Catholics we didn't eat meat much on Friday. On Ash Wednesday, we'd have smudges on our foreheads, well, more likely on our nose. The parish priest didn't have a very good aim. We wore black. The men wore black ties on Good Friday, and the women all wore mourning. It was a culture which communicated some sense that we were the friends of God, that the saints were our neighbours. We saw the world in terms of gratitude, blessing, the justice of the kingdom. But we weren't a terribly devout family, actually. We did once try to have family rosary, but it didn't work very well because the dogs burst in and licked our faces, and so we all dissolved in giggles. So we were a Catholic family with a sort of clear culture which helped us to see the world in terms of blessing. But we weren't enclosed. We enjoyed the same food, sport as our non-Christian friends. We were open to the world. And I think that you could say that the challenge that Christianity faces in this coming century is how we can maintain both the confidence and the openness. Now, I don't know about here in the States, but in England, we face a degree of aggression, religion in general, which we haven't known since the Romans arrived with Christianity almost 1900 years ago. There are books like Dawkins, The God Delusion, Christopher Hitchens, his book, God is Not Great, How Religion Poisons Everything. There's a vast aggression against religion. And you can understand it. Because everywhere around the world you look, you see the violence of the clash of religious fundamentalists. And so it is quite understandable that many people in Europe, and maybe beginning to be the case also in the States, think that the world will only be safe if you get rid of God. Perhaps even more challenging for us isn't the aggression, it's the ignorance. Increasingly, people know almost nothing about Christianity. I was intrigued by the young man I read about the other day who expressed his surprise that churches were open on a Sunday. He thought we were against that sort of thing. Or I heard about a man who met a Hispanic kid called Jesus, and he said, "What a funny name. Who would call their kid after a swear word?" So you do get this sense of people finding Christianity remote from their experience. The consumerist mentality, which sees everything in terms of the market, everything with a price tag, that leaves little place for blessing and gratitude and transcendence. And yet there is among the young, in my experience, a vast thirst for God. If I just take Oxford, where I live, that's where Blackfriars is, in Oxford University. Among the young, there is a very high degree of interest in religion. Catholic masses are filled with students. The level of participation is much higher than the average population. The young are looking. Often, though, they don't look to Christianity. I was fascinated while I was waiting for the plane in Sydney Airport. I went into the bookshop, the main bookshop, to see what they had for sale on religion. I wish to formally deny I was checking out whether they had any of my books. And you all know where to get them now, okay? And I was astonished. Sydney Airport, they had a big section, I'd say at least 100 titles. What was interesting was that all of those books were